Flurry of UFO sightings have been reported in the upper North Island over the past few months. Ufo New Zealand, which records sightings, they say there's been a marked increase in the number of objects reported to them over the last couple of months. Ufo New Zealand Director Suzanne Hansen is with me. Good evening.
Good evening there, Larry.
Can you tell us, Ufo New Zealand Research Network, who are you? What are you doing?
Okay, we're a nationwide research and investigation network for UFO sightings. We were established in the year 2000, and we have a staff of investigators throughout New Zealand who investigate the sightings that are reported to us. Our investigators include 2 former senior air traffic controllers, a pilot and a policeman, so we have quite a high calibre staff who have all had sightings themselves.
All right, so if there is a sighting, you have investigators that go and have a look into this, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You're saying that there's been unprecedented UFO sightings?
Well, there's been unprecedented sightings, certainly in the history of since we've had Ufo Z in action. If we go back in history to the Kaikoura Lights in the late 70s and the Gisborne Flap, there would have been a lot more sightings reported then, but certainly the amount that we're getting at the moment is out of the norm from what we would normally receive.
Now you talk about a cluster. Where's this cluster?
It's what we call a UFO flap, and that is where you've got a time period and a certain area of a country where you've got a lot of sightings being reported at that time with similar characteristics. And that's mainly at the moment in the Bay of Plenty, the Waikato, Auckland and Northland.
And these characteristics, what are people seeing? Lights, spacecraft, aliens, what are they seeing?
Well, we've had a lot of sightings of very large orange lights around the size of a helicopter. We're not talking about Chinese lanterns here. But we've also had sightings of triangular objects with lights that delineate the shape, objects that have got light configurations that are not those required by law in New Zealand for aircraft to have, so they're very different. But we have also had 2 sightings in Northland and 1 in the Bay of Plenty where they actually got to close proximity of objects and were able to provide considerable detail about them. One of those witnesses is a very high credibility witness, and I won't give any further details than that because they've asked not to be identified in any way. The other witnesses are outdoorish people, very down to earth, and we've had the video interviews looked at by a clinical psychologist to see how they come across as witnesses, and by a police officer who is involved in interview procedures with the police.
Can these be explained as natural phenomena?
Oh no, for goodness sake. No, this is this old hackneyed thing that's often brought out by sceptics of the topic. Of course, there are many sightings that can be attributed to natural phenomenon, and others that might be Chinese lanterns or something like that. But no, when you've got high credibility witnesses describing extremely specific details, and they have actually had physical effects and been to doctors to have that established, then no, we're not looking at aircraft and we're not looking at natural phenomena.
Well, what are we looking at then? Because it seems to me there's a lot of this stuff being reported, but there's never anything definitive. There's never any hard evidence.
There is definitive stuff, but unfortunately when you get that high calibre definitive stuff, you have witnesses who don't want to go public. And so our hands are tied. I mean, we get reports from police, we get reports from airline pilots, from all kinds of private pilots, as well as other credible witnesses like farmers and hunters and people like that who've got nothing to gain from reporting it. But they don't want to go public because they don't want the ridicule that they often get as a side effect of going public.
What about with iPhones and video and all this sort of stuff? Do you ever get presented with the hard evidence?
Yes, we have the hard evidence, but once again, those people don't want it publicised because they don't want to be recognised or identified. We have the hard evidence from overseas because Ufo NZ works with military and aviation groups overseas. And we are privy to some of the phenomenal pilot and military pilot sightings that they have on film, which we are not in the position to be able to share, unfortunately. But that evidence is definitely there. And there are aviation and military groups, particularly in South America, that are putting together this material to eventually bring out a very high-powered case for the existence of
Right,
these
well, I mean, if
things
that's
that
the
are
case,
not
yeah.
earthly.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, I look forward to that. But, yeah, you know, if you had all the evidence, if it was conclusive, somebody would bring it out and it'd be there and we'd all see
Well,
it and
has
we'd know
been brought
about it.
out, but mainly overseas. If you like to look at such documentaries done by Leslie Keane, who is an investigative journalist in the States. She's recently done a documentary which screened here on Sky, showing, you know, military pilots, all kinds of airline pilots. So there is that highly credible stuff out there. It's just that we don't generally see much of it in New Zealand.
Thank you. That is Suzanne Hansen, Ufo NZ Director.